Welcome to the newest episode of the Thomas Take Sports Podcast. I'm Ryan Thomas, of course, your host, joined once again by Ryan Caughill, joining me on the show. What was that, last week, Ryan, or the week before? I can't remember. I'm losing track of time. Nonetheless, joining me on the show again, Ryan Caughill. What's going on, buddy?
I'm doing good. As we were talking before the show, I'm currently in the process. I'm in day 5 of my recovery from COVID. So this is actually great because I have another 5 days of 4 days of isolation after this. So it's been lonely. I sound a lot better now than I did just, a day or two ago. So I appreciate you for texting me and being like, hey, let's do this if you're interested. So I appreciate that.
We're going to get through this. I'm here for you.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
So usually, and when I never tested positive for COVID, but I'm pretty sure I had it. I think I got tested one too early or two too late.
Yeah.
So I'm pretty sure I had it. But when I did, man, it was pretty lonely. That's the best word that I could use to describe it. It wasn't even so much the sickness. It was just more so being stuck in my house, not a whole lot to do. And then I was near somebody that tested positive for COVID, so then that put me in a quarantine in and of itself. So it was a rough couple years, but hopefully brighter times are ahead, and hopefully I'm glad to hear that you're feeling better. Hopefully you're out of the woods with your COVID bout. So
thank you. I'm definitely feeling better. In the 2 years that this has been going on, I've been in close contact like 3 or 4 times. And then I get it. And I'm like, come on. And what sucks is that it's literally the symptoms hit the day after I was at the Sabres St. Louis game. So there was that whole contacting my primary care provider because I have to contact the state or, the county because I was out, I was at Key Bank Center just the night before. So, but luckily it was a sparse crowd. I wasn't really that close to some people. So, hopefully everybody else is doing good. But
what's crazy is, to your point about going to a Sabres game, I was at the last Sabres game prior to COVID shutting everything down.
Ooh.
So that ticket, I still have that stub. I don't know if it's going to be worth anything, but it's a nice reminder. I guess, reminder of how far we have come over the last 2 years, especially. I saw, prior to this show starting with you here, The Last Dance with Michael Jordan debuted yesterday, 2 years ago, and that got me through COVID, as did Dark Side of the Ring and a bunch of other shows that I watched during that time. So I'm glad those times are 2 years ago, not 2 years from now, hopefully. God willing that stuff is all over with. But to a better talking point, some of the subject matter that you guys will see on this show as well, you guys can fire away comments in the comment section. This episode of the Thomas Take Sports Podcast, as every episode of the Thomas Take Sports Podcast, is posted to any audio podcasting platform that you can think of. And I say that because the laundry list of those nowadays is very long. So, check it out. Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, YouTube, you name it, as well as the Bills Mafia Podcast Network. Very excited to be a new addition to that slate on the Bills Mafia Podcast Network. You got Justice General on there, Ryan Caughill, run by Mookie Hawkins and Dale Reed, 2 awesome, fantastic guys. So it's awesome to be a part of that as we inch closer and closer to this upcoming season of Bills football. And with that, the first talking point that I want to discuss with Ryan on the show, once again, is a little bit of an AFC East pre-draft divisional outlook, because in my personal opinion, the NFL draft is the most important facet of an NFL offseason. That's where championship teams are made. That's where championship teams can be built or destroyed, depending how good or bad these teams do in an NFL draft. And I want to discuss, Ryan, the pre-draft divisional outlook for these teams based on what they have done so far this offseason. And I'll start with the New York Jets. Now, obviously, I think the New York Jets, if you were to go 4 for 4, like ranking the division, I think it's safe to say Robert Saleh has the New York Jets in a little bit of a rebuild mode. The Jets are in a rebuild mode. But from what you have seen thus far, do you see the Jets being any better win-loss wise, based on what they've done this offseason in comparison to last year? Do you see them being any better? They have 2 top 10 picks. I know these 2 top 10 picks are going to be crucial to their success. Possibly, what direction do you see them going in with these picks in this upcoming draft as well?
So thank you for adding that last part, because I was going to mention, I really don't watch in terms of mainstream, I guess, news, sports news. I really don't watch anything. I watch Rich Eisen and I watch Pat McAfee, and that's pretty much my extent. And Rich is a Jets fan, so obviously with some recent news that came out today, I actually caught a clip just before we started or before we went live where he was talking about how the Jets draft could potentially change because Deebo Samuel is now available in San Francisco. And if you have the pick at 4, Jets could take somebody like Sauce Gardner at corner and get a premier lockdown number 1 corner, but then trade away your 10th, which I think is right. I think it's the 10th overall pick,
right,
from them to San Francisco, along with assumably some other picks for Deebo Samuel. And then they obviously have the money they definitely have the money to give Deebo the contract that he wants. So you potentially, heading into this draft week, have the Jets looking at walking out of this NFL draft with possibly like a Sauce Gardner type player, or and Deebo Samuel if they trade away like that number 10 pick. So the Jets, which that they're looking for a wide receiver because they were in on Tyreek Hill, or they wanted to be in on Tyreek Hill. You have, so I'm assuming, the assumption is that they're in on Samuel, is that they can walk away with 2 fantastic players right now, both theoretically and in reality, and the draft hasn't even started yet. You're still a week out. So in terms of where their picks are going for this draft, I again thank you for bringing that up, because that was you teed up the ball perfectly for me to do that Vlad Guerrero Jr. 3 home runs in a game.
Oh man!
And I don't even like baseball, and you know what I mean.
I was gonna ask you that. Do you like baseball, Ryan? If you do, then we could put a segment for that in the show. While we're on here.
I so badly want to, and when Toronto was in Buffalo playing, I didn't get a chance to go to a game, but I tried watching, and I'm like, this is a drag. I would love to go to a game. I do plan to go this baseball season in the summer up to Toronto with a couple of buddies of mine. Like
Definitely
I said,
though,
I don't like baseball. I barely know anything about it. But if hands down, one of my favorite humans on planet Earth is Vlad Guerrero Jr. And so he is, if I had to pick a favorite baseball player, I mean, it's him. And then there's a list of 10 empty spots and then no one else, because I don't know anybody else really. So no, it is him. But no, I mean, off-season wise, the answer for the Jets is in short order, no. I don't know anybody that they signed in free agency that is at least coming to the top of my head. I think Zach Wilson, their quarterback, I think he has legitimate potential. I just don't think Robert Saleh, who is a brilliant defensive coach, is necessarily the guy that you needed to bring in for your young quarterback. So, I mean, we'll see how it all shakes out, but the Jets do be the Jets, and they seem to have put the wrong pieces together at the wrong time. Again, Saleh is a fantastic coach. I think Zach Wilson can be a fantastic quarterback. It's just, are you putting the right pieces in there? So, and so far this offseason, there was nothing that I liked. The Jets are going to jet, I guess.
The Jets are going to jet. As far as just breaking down and listing some of the moves that they have made, that I think I understand the direction that they're going in. And it's better on paper than what they've done in years past. They signed Laken Tomlinson, the guard formerly of the San Francisco 49ers. He is an interior run-blocking guard, which is where the Jets really struggled. And the Jets are a run-first football team, which is a rarity in today's NFL. They did sign Braxton Berrios, who did pretty well for them last season, to a 2-year deal. Tevin Coleman was brought in at running back. A very interesting signing that I do think they made, which I think was probably the best signing that they made all offseason, was a 3-year deal with CJ Uzoma, who is a very big physical tight end. That's one that I like. 6'6", 260 pounds. A tight end is a quarterback safety valve, always has been, always will be, but especially in this recent era of the NFL where we have seen Rob Gronkowski, obviously Tony Gonzalez had a Hall of Fame career, Shannon Sharp prior to that. Along the way now, Gronk is, I'd say, towards the later part of his career. You have Travis Kelce, you have George Kittle. Great friend of mine and a former guest on the show, Tyler Dunn. You guys remember when he was on the show, and I'm sure, Ryan, you've interacted with him on Twitter and such here and there. If you haven't, he's an awesome guy. He wrote a book recently about how the tight end position has completely been revitalized within the NFL, basically saying, and the title of the book, if my memory serves me right, is that tight ends have saved football. And I'm very much looking forward to his take on that, because I think I know the direction he's going in with that take. I would definitely have him on the show, to talk about that book and other topics coming up. So stay tuned for that. A little bit of a preview for what's to come. DJ Reed, a corner, as well as Jordan Whitehead, a safety, Nathan Shepard, Dan Feeney, and last and certainly not least, Joe Flacco, brought in to be a mentor to Zach Wilson. So the offseason for the Jets hasn't really been anything to write home about. Greg Zuerlein was also an addition that they made, as well as Solomon Thomas, who didn't really get off to a great start in his career with the 49ers. The next team that is always a mystery in terms of the post-TB12 era. Talk about prior to Tom Brady, you knew what you were going to get with the New England Patriots. Now you really don't know what you're getting with the New England Patriots in terms of what they have done this offseason or what they haven't done this offseason. Ryan, I feel like Bill Belichick has a trick up his sleeve. I would hope he has a trick up his sleeve for this upcoming draft, because the Patriots, they have not done hardly anything this offseason in terms of adding new talent to the roster to make themselves more formidable heading into this upcoming season. What's your take on the Patriots in terms of just their recent strategy post-Tom Brady? Recently, they just made a trade for Devontae Parker. I would say that's the biggest move that they've made all offseason.
Yeah, so talking free agency outside of Devontae Parker, talking free agency just as free agency, in the signing of guys, it's to their own detriment. It's not like they didn't try, but they tried to lowball every person because they're trying to do what you would have been able to do had Tom Brady still been your quarterback and you didn't run him out of town, and B, what teams like Buffalo are doing, because they're just so jam-packed with talent and people are trying to win a Super Bowl. But you're not there. You don't have Tom Brady, and going back to B, you're nowhere close to being able to win a Super Bowl right now on paper. Now, it's the NFL, so you totally could, right? The Patriots could go win the Super Bowl this year. I doubt it, because we're just talking about the AFC East, but the AFC as a whole is like, there's not a single team that's really looking for a quarterback right now, except for Pittsburgh, but not really, because you have Trubisky. So there's no team in the AFC that's looking for quarterback. So it's pretty much the AFC's lockdown. But when it comes to the Patriots, like I said, it's not like they didn't try. They just lowballed everybody. Everybody else went anywhere else. And so I'm really, as a Bills fan, I don't care. Right? More power to the Patriots not being able to do this, but show me a successful Patriots draft.
It's tough to find. It's
There's
really
none.
tough to find.
There's none.
Yeah, that's what makes the Patriots just this big anomaly in terms of, the talking point, and not to get too deep into this, but the talking point always was is it Brady or is it Belichick? Who deserves more credit? And I think just in terms of the business of the NFL, you'd you'd be a moron if you didn't say Tom Brady
It's
at this
it's
point. At this point, I really do
it's
think that.
absolutely Tom Brady, because if you look, Tom Brady went to Arizona, or not to Arizona, but to Tampa Bay, and Bruce Arians is the head coach, who, this is why I said Arizona, was in Arizona with a very good Arizona team for a number of years, and they didn't win anything. And so then he retires, and then he comes back, and now he's retired again, but he's in like a consulting role because of this whole issue with, or apparently a power struggle with Tom. But it's like Tom Brady is who got all of the Patriots Super Bowls and all of the Patriots success for those many years. Tom Brady is the reason that Bruce Arians has a ring in Tampa Bay. Tom Brady is also the reason why Belichick is now losing, and also the reason why Bruce Arians has to be in a consulting role and not in a player interactive role in Tampa. So it hands down 100% is Tom Brady. But when it comes to the Patriots, they cannot draft, they cannot retain talent, they cannot sustain talent, and they can't recruit new talent in. So up to and until Belichick embraces, because you have to remember what they were doing was successful for so long, because a lot of the guys that they had, because they were winning, but a lot of the guys that they had been there for so long. This is no longer 2001. This is 2 decades later. It's a completely different NFL. It's a completely different world. Yes, you have more money to spend, but that doesn't mean people are going to take less. Like, we're paying Von Miller for $120 million over 6 years. Granted, it's backloaded, and he's probably not going to be here the last 2, maybe 3 years of that deal. But you're still paying a crap ton of money to try and win these Super Bowls. People aren't taking these low end deals to try and just win anymore. If they're worth that money, they're worth that money, and that's the way that the NFL is. And so, up to and until the point that the Patriots can accept that and can operate in that way, then it is what it is. But I mean, I like Kendrick Bourne as a wide receiver, but they definitely needed a guy like Devontae Parker. But you don't have an offensive line. Your running backs are deep, but they're not really that diverse in skill and talent. Your defense is nothing, pretty much in shambles, and your special teams, which is a part of the football game that I value, is not good. Is not that consistent. So it's like they're going to do nothing. They're going to be nobodies. But that said, they're lucky that they're in a division that has the New Jersey Jets, because at least they won't be fourth.
What are your thoughts? I'll give you my quick thoughts here. I'll give you my thoughts first. So, with talking about any team in the National Football League, you have to talk about their quarterback, because this is as quarterback driven a league now as it has ever been, and in my opinion, it's always been quarterback driven. Like, people say, oh, this is a quarterback-driven era. No, every team that's won a Super Bowl, for the most part, the exception of very, very few with the elite of the elite defenses, has to have a decent quarterback. I'm not talking about Trent Dilfer. I'm not talking about Rex Grossman, ultimately in a losing effort against the Colts, but still. I'm talking about Bradshaw, Joe Montana, all the quarterbacks that have led their teams to championships. Brady, obviously. Is Mac Jones that guy? Can Mac Jones be that quarterback that can lead the Patriots back to greatness? Thus far, I think Mac Jones has shown glimpses of being a very accurate quarterback, a quarterback with an awesome arm, especially over the middle of the field. In traffic, he can locate a football, throws a decent deep ball, I'd say decent in terms of fair, not elite, accurate from short range, obviously. But what are your thoughts on Mac Jones? Do you think he can be that guy that can lead the Patriots beyond Tom Brady and back into greatness?
So I'm going to start off by saying you and I are going to have the probably most unpopular takes amongst Bills Mafia when it comes to Mac Jones. Just because you complimented him is like, that's like the baseline of being hated. I think that if Chicago, and I've said this since the draft, if Chicago fails to develop Justin Fields the correct way, Mac Jones is the number one quarterback out of that draft class.
100%.
And I think Justin Fields has the potential to be the best quarterback out of that draft class, because he reminds me a lot of Josh Allen. Like, I think he's a lot of raw talent that just needs to be molded. And I mean, they have a good head coach and a good front office in Chicago now, so we'll see. But I truly think that Mac Jones can be the number one quarterback out of that draft class. Now, you can be the number one quarterback out of that draft class, but if you don't have the front office and the coaching staff that's relevant in today's NFL, making the decisions and managing the money like the rest of the league is, while the rest of the league is doing it, then it doesn't matter. Because again, you're right. I think he is accurate, and I think he does throw well, but he doesn't have an offensive line. He doesn't have a defense. There's not a consistent enough special teams. So, yes, I agree. I think that he could be the guy. Now, whether they win a Super Bowl or not, I have no idea. Because as we just got done talking about, it was Brady, not Belichick. So, but I think Mac Jones is a talented enough guy who's just really young, and you're going to see him, bulk up. He's going to get more muscle, and he's going to train, and he's going to get more talent. He's a high IQ football guy. It's going to take some time, and he is in the most difficult conference and probably one of the most challenging divisions to try and navigate. But if they do it right, yeah, I think he absolutely can be the guy that can move the Patriots into that number 2 spot back in the division.
The top 6 additions. This was rated Sports Illustrated rather than doing top 5. I don't know why they did top 6. I don't know if it's because they couldn't name the top 5 or because the top 5 would have been so bad this year for the New England Patriots that they just couldn't. I don't know. Maybe they just couldn't do it. But they rated the top 6 additions for the New England Patriots, and rattling these off and looking at these first and foremost prior to the show, I'm thinking to myself, this is, to your point, not the same New England Patriots in terms of the dynasty years are over. The allure of that, the selling point of that is gone, and they can't attract the free agents that they used to be able to based on Brady not being there and plenty of others. So Ty Montgomery is the first one, who has been this running back, wide receiver tweener, journeyman type tweener for the last 5, 6, 7 years. He's had a decent career, obviously, despite being short in stature. He can definitely play, but I think his best years are behind him. Terrence Mitchell, who has been around a long time, played with the Texans for a few years. Mack Wilson, who was brought in from the Cleveland Browns. He started 14 games his rookie year. Alabama product, had 82 tackles that season. He was awarded the starting position there on out, and his playing time after that began to decline. So as the years have gone on, he's probably a 4 or 5 year pro. He's received less and less playing time. So you don't know what you're going to get out of him. He's had injury issues. Jabril Peppers, who was traded from the Giants from Cleveland to the Giants in the OBJ trade, he goes to his third team, the New England Patriots. He's a former first-round draft choice, 25th overall in 2017. Michigan Wolverine appeared in 29 games for the Browns throughout his first 2 years in the National Football League, but during that time started all 29 contests, so I think that's probably their best addition. Malcolm Butler, who was benched during the Super Bowl, he's back. And number 1, as I mentioned, Devontae Parker. And the Devontae Parker one is interesting to me because he is a guy that has shown in Miami that he could stretch the field despite being short in stature. He's got the speed. He can run long distance on a line with great speed. But Mac Jones is not that type of quarterback. So how they are going to use Devontae Parker, to me, I'm assuming in the slot. I think the days of N'Keal Harry might be over in New England. I would hope so, being that he hasn't really done a whole lot for them since he was drafted in the first round. And to go back to your point, Ryan, their drafts have just been so bad these last few years. So I'm curious to see what tricks Bill Belichick has up his sleeve because Robert Kraft spoke to the fact that he doesn't want to see a losing product. He wants to compete for a playoff spot, championship every single season. But with the roster that they have now, I just don't know how they're going to do that. So the Patriots were the next team on the AFC East pre-draft divisional outlook that we discussed here on the show today. Next up, dying to talk to you about the Miami Dolphins. And to say that is wow. I mean, when was the last time that you or I could sit on a show and say that we're dying to talk about the Miami Dolphins? Because the Dolphins they've been okay, but they haven't been a team to really get excited about these last few years. And I'm not saying that I'm excited for the Dolphins as a fan because I want them to fail. Obviously, we're Bills fans on the show here. But what I will say is, in terms of the moves that they have made, now that is a team that has made moves. That is a team that has brought talent onto their roster and have drastically changed the expectations for their franchise in the span of 2 months. First and foremost, Tyreek Hill. Now, when this move went down, I was shocked that it went down as quickly as it did. It literally went from me being in the shower, hearing my Alexa tell me the Schefter tweet, to me getting out of the shower, getting dressed, walking out of my front door, and Tyreek Hill was a member of the Miami Dolphins. So that was about a 15-minute span. Schefter tweeted it. Miami made the trade, gave up a lot, paid him a lot. What are your thoughts on Tyreek Hill becoming a Miami Dolphin, no less going from the Kansas City Chiefs to the Miami Dolphins, going from Mahomes to Tua?
So what's funny about that is I had on right after, a day or two after that was my second or third show of the Rust Belt Report on the fan base. And I had Matt Perino on, and we had brought that up because it had just happened. And he said that the deal was actually kind of starting to be worked out the night before. Because I said the same thing. I'm like, this is like a 15-minute, hey, I'm unhappy. Oh, I'm now deciding between the Jets and the Dolphins. Oh, it was never the Jets. It was always Miami. So same thing. It was like I woke up in the morning for work, and first thing I do is I check Twitter, what's going on, who's pissed off at me today, whatever. And,
exactly.
What did
it's the life of a content creator.
Yeah, right. What did I do overnight? What did I say? Oh, I said hi to somebody. All right. I've liked the Dolphins from a content creator standpoint, from a podcaster standpoint, from a fan of the game standpoint. I've liked where the Dolphins have been heading. And I think obviously the last 2 years, they've been a game away from being that third team, from a division to make the playoffs in a wild card spot. So for the last year or two. So it's been kind of exciting to watch, especially when you go back 2 years and when Brian Flores first came in there. And you remember 47 of the 53-man roster was requesting trades and wanted out. And then to spend your next year or two being a game away from the playoffs is something that I think was going to be fantastic. And obviously now we know all this stuff with Brian Flores and suing the NFL. Now multiple coaches are suing the NFL, and it's a class action suit. Obviously we know that, that's happening, and then it's continually in the news, and they're not letting us forget about it, which is great. But in terms of Tyreek Hill becoming a Miami Dolphin, that is a Brandon Beane Buffalo Bills type move of hey, we're here, we need to step over the line now. And acquiring Tyreek Hill, now unfortunately losing a talent in Devontae Parker while adding a talent in Tyreek Hill sucks, because you're oh man, what if we had Devontae Parker and Tyreek Hill?
Right.
And so for Tua, it works. Because then you have these two great talents that you can throw at your wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3 positions, if not wide receiver 1, because Tua can get the ball out a little bit faster than Mac can. So it's just he's just not accurate. So if you combine the two of them, it's great. It's the quarterback that you want in the AFC East, but we don't want either of them in the AFC East. So, no, it's you're right. Out of obviously not talking about Buffalo, but out of the other 3 teams in the division, Miami's done the most. You're bringing in Terran Armstead, Raheem Mostert, Cedric Teddy Bridgewater is a fantastic quarterback. Chase Edmonds at running back, Emmanuel Ogbah. Like, the list just keeps going on and on and on. I'm sure you might have the counts. If you don't, I don't want to put you on the spot for it.
I do.
It's like,
I have
so
over like 12 moves that they've made that I would say are considerable. I mean, I'm not saying that the Miami Dolphins are going to win the AFC East. I'm not saying that. But by no means. But what I am saying is, if any team looked at Buffalo and said, let's take a crack at those guys.
Yeah.
It's Miami. And credit to them, because they play us twice a year. They went out, they made some decent moves. To your point, if they would have had Devontae Parker and Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle and Mike Gesicki, you're talking about a really solid group of players, along with new additions, 2 new running backs. When's the last time we could talk about a team signing 2 free agent running backs in one offseason, Raheem Mostert as well as Chase Edmonds? Those are 2 additions that I actually really like for Miami, as long as those guys stay healthy, which they have been known not to do so these last couple years. So, Tyreek Hill is the one that gets the headlines for sure, and rightfully so. I mean, he has been one of the top 3 wide receivers in this league the last 5-6 years. But the move that really showed me that the Dolphins are ready to play was the Teron Armstead move. I mean, your quarterback is only as good as his offensive line. Teron Armstead, 5-year deal, $87.5 million, $43.3 million guaranteed. That's the big one. They landed a free agent that was ranked on ESPN's list as the top free agent, and it was a big missing piece of what was the NFL's worst pass blocking unit a year ago by a wide margin. And I'm no Tua fan. I'm going to talk about Tua in a second, but when he's healthy, Teron Armstead is one of the best in the league. And you go to what I like to look at is how available a player has been or unavailable a player has been. Armstead started 64 out of 97 games since 2016 and only played less than half the year last season, 8 games out of 18. Injuries happen, but $43 million for a tackle that has had some injury issues these last few years. I'm hoping, for Miami's sake, the warm weather, gets the cobwebs out of the body a little bit for Teron Armstead, and he can stay a little bit healthier for the Dolphins for their sake. But I definitely feel that this offseason for Miami has been great. The big question is, going back to the Tua conversation, if I had stated all these moves, and let's go back a little bit. Let's go back to whichever year it was that Tua was drafted. What was that, 2-3 years ago in the Burrow draft, whenever that was, 2020? 2020, okay, yeah, because it was during COVID. I remember that now. So I'm watching the draft, and I know Joe Burrow is going to be the first overall draft choice. I know that Miami is looking to get a quarterback. I know all the stuff on the Dolphins message boards throughout the last calendar year about tanking for Tua. And I kept my fingers crossed that, in fact, not only would they tank for Tua, but take Tua, because when I look at the quarterbacks as closely as I do every year, I'm no Mel Kiper, I'm no Todd McShay, but the one position that I look at more than any other is the quarterbacks. Whether Buffalo was looking for one or not, I like to watch quarterbacks in college. I like to see which ones can translate to the National Football League. And when the Miami Dolphins selected Tua instead of Justin Herbert, I kid you not, I called my friend Eric Ellis. He will attest to this. I called him and I said, that will go down as one of the worst decisions that a team has made in recent memory. And so far, did I say that knowing that Justin Herbert was going to throw for 4,500 yards and all these touchdowns? I didn't even know Justin Herbert was going to be that great.
And almost take the Chargers to the playoffs.
Right. This close, as well as Rookie of the Year, one of the best rookie seasons anyone's ever had at quarterback. Did I know that was going to happen? No, I didn't. But what I did know is that the injury that Tua suffered, mainly the hip injury, was going to plague him for the next few years. The Tua that we're talking about now could be far worse than the Tua that we're talking about 5 years from now. God willing for the Dolphins that they want that investment to work out. You hope that the hip eventually works itself out, but it's a hip injury. This is not a knee. This is not an ankle. It's a hip, and he's a quarterback, and it's his throwing hip, if my memory serves me right. So we've seen Tua come along slowly, but not so surely. I've seen Tua look really, really bad. I've seen Tua look okay. Now, Miami's thoughts, and I want your take on this. To my knowledge, Miami's thoughts appear to be if we surround Tua with as much talent as humanly frickin' possible, Tua could be okay rather than less than average. But to me, that's not how this league works. I think your quarterback has to have something a little bit of an above average skill set in order to be a player that can lead you into a playoff run or deep playoff run. Miami wants to make the playoffs, but the goal isn't to just make the playoffs. The goal for every team outside of Jacksonville, when they hired Urban Meyer, was to go to the Super Bowl. What's your take on that as far as what I've stated on Tua so far? And what is your evaluation of Tua thus far in his career?
So I don't think that you are, if anything, I don't think that you're that far off the beaten path if you're even off of it. Because so here's my thing with Tua, and it's twofold. First, I would agree with you that their thought process is, which should be the thought process with every quarterback, is we should give them the offensive line that protects them. We should give them all of the weapons that they need that complement their skill set. Reinforce the strengths and support the weaknesses, because this is the NFL and you need a running back as much as you need a wide receiver, as much as you need a tight end. Or apparently an offensive lineman like Deion Dawkins who goes out and catches touchdowns sometimes. So it is what it is. So I would agree with you. That's definitely their thought process. If that's their thought process just because it's Tua and he's, coming into the NFL with this injury, that's the wrong thought process. You should have had that regardless. But my thinking with Tua is twofold. One, you did him a complete, absolute disservice by switching him in and out with Ryan Fitzpatrick in his first season. An absolute, a mental, I'm not even saying like he felt bad. It's just like, if we were at work and, I'm your boss and I have you do 97% of a project, and then I have, Joey over here, after every project that you do, I'm not just talking one, I'm talking 17 something projects in a row. You do 97% of the work. And then at 97%, I bring in Joey and I go, Joey's going to do the rest of it now. Are you not going to go like,
what the hell? Yeah.
Bro, what? Like, even if I go, you've done a fantastic job, I just need you to go do this now, and Joey's going to do this, you're going to go, this is absolutely crap because I can't finish what I started. Right. And I always try and like keep the human element into it. And so that's like definitely one of them.
For sure.
Because these guys are human. Like, you can't just be like, he has a good arm and it's not his throwing hip, or I have no idea if it is or isn't. But, you can't be like, oh, well, he's a robot and this is going to work, The second part of it is not just the hip injury, because I agree with you on that. It's going to aggravate you for a while. And you and I as hockey fans know that, the hockey equivalent to that is a goaltender, because you have to use your hip. You're moving, and your entire job is moving side to side. So everything from here down to your hip is in constant movement. And if you're injuring anything from your shoulders or your arms through to your spine and your back to your hips, it's going to severely inhibit your job. And especially something like Tua had, where you're potentially not regaining or being able to fully utilize that full range of motion. We know Josh Allen, as Bills fans, was not utilizing his full range of motion. And it was one of the things that he worked on and fixed, on how to correctly use that and utilize all of it. But the second thing is, which it sounds like a slight, and it is, and it shouldn't be, but it is. But again, that human element is that he's a left-handed quarterback. And players are so used to a right-handed quarterback that it's screwing with it screws up the plays, it screws up muscle memory, it screws up it screws everything up. Because now like for running backs, for instance, you're lining up on the left side because that's where they're going. And the way that you hold the ball is the certain way. So you have to switch your mechanics and your muscle memory for everything you do now. The offensive line, usually your offensive line, you want your left side to be really strong because that's the blind side. And so anybody that's an offensive or a left offensive tackle or a left guard is going to be like, hey, I'm the primary guy for this. But you're not. If you're on the current Miami Dolphins, it has to be the right side because the right side is his blind side. Same thing for the wide receivers too. Seeing your quarterback and seeing and looking exactly to where their arm is and to where the ball's coming from, you're going to want to look. And now this is obviously it depends on there's going to be other people in your way and stuff like that and distance. But if you're looking in one direction to your left, because now that you're turning around, you have to look to the opposite side. If you're looking to the left, you now have to look to the right, because that's where the ball's coming from. The ball's coming from the right versus the left. So it screws everybody up. It screws up the plays. You now have to do, and this is not like Madden. You can't just flip the play. It screws everything up. And this is the thing that people are like, oh, well, he's left-handed, so what? I just named for you 18. I named you everything from what's on paper to how you execute it. That's the entire process has to change. And it's not a small change. Like, again, if you're in a manual labor job and you're doing the same thing day in and day out for years, say you're not in this sense, a rookie. Say you're a guy who's been in the league 14, 15 years. If you've been doing the same thing every day for 8 hours a day for 14, 15 years, and I come up to you and I go, I need you to stop and I need you to do it in reverse. You're going to go, what? And then you're going to screw everything up, and it's going to take so much longer for it to happen. So, and again, this is, I love to be the guy because I don't see too many people do it, but I love to be the guy that introduces, which sounds horrible, but like introduces this human factor to it. Like, it's not just a hip, like the hip injury doesn't make it better. Obviously it makes the situation worse no matter what, but you combine in the fact that he might not have his full range of motion. Things might change because of the surgery and how he does it. So now he has to learn a whole new way. He's left-handed. It screws up the offensive line. It screws up the running backs. It screws up the wide receivers and the tight ends. It screws up the coaches' playbooks because you have to reverse everything, and now you have to teach that to everybody. You have to spend time in practicing maybe more. So now guys are going to be more tired. It's just this whole snowball of a thing that occurs.
And you mentioned earlier in the show, the additions, when we were talking about the additions prior to kind of diving fully into Miami as we have here, they brought in Teddy Bridgewater, who is someone that has started seasons and has started for multiple organizations, the Vikings, the Broncos, the Panthers. He started for multiple teams. So if you have this full end-all be-all faith in Tua, I'm looking at this as a football guy. I'm not looking at this as a Bills fan. I have to take my cap off as a Bills fan every now and then when I look at how these teams are built, and I'm analyzing. We're analyzing. You wore a Sabres one. I got the Nike golf hat. It is what it is. If you have this end-all be-all diehard faith in Tua, why are you bringing in a guy that could potentially start if Tua, like Josh Allen drafted Josh Allen, Matt Barkley, Josh Allen, Mitch Trubisky on a 1-year deal. Tua, Ryan Fitzpatrick. Tua, Teddy Bridgewater. You see the difference? Like the backups are guys. The backups are guys that could start and be fully capable of winning you games. Not maybe half the games, depending on what version of those quarterbacks that you get, whether it's Fitz-tragic or Fitz-magic, or whether it's Louisville Bridgewater or backup Bridgewater. Yeah. You never know what you're going to get, but to my point, they made all these moves. These type of moves are moves that you make when you believe that you got the guy, your Super Bowl caliber quarterback, and you're hoping that you can take him to the next step. Now, interestingly enough, we talk about Miami. The one thing you have to talk about is going from Flores to Mike McDaniel. That whole situation was, dare I say it, pretty disgusting in terms of how they handled it. If the allegations are even half true, the ownership group could be in some real trouble. Obviously, there's a lot of litigation and stuff going on with that right now, which will definitely be a story to tune into throughout the rest of this offseason. But Mike McDaniel is a coach that I actually like. And I don't want to. I don't want to like Miami's coach, but if they were to fire Brian Flores for whatever reasons they did, they hired a guy that I actually like. So if there's one guy that could actually squeeze the juice that's left out of Tua, I do believe it's him. He'd be a decent. A case could be made that he'd be a decent guy to do that with. So we'll see. I would say right now, in terms of the odds-on favorites to challenge Buffalo, I don't think they'll beat Buffalo for the AFC, but the team that could challenge Buffalo twice a year, more than the Patriots, more than the Jets, is the Dolphins. Would you agree with that assessment?
Yeah, I would absolutely agree, and I do love Mike McDaniel. He's he's a great person, which is great. But I mean, at the end of the day, to add one more thing to my rant from before. Your backup is a right-handed quarterback. So if you're teaching everything left-handed, then you're throwing it. It's a screwed up process, and it's a knock that shouldn't have to exist against Tua. Like, it's not anything he has control over, being left or right-handed, by no means. And I mean, obviously I'm not, saying like, oh, it's your fault, like switch whatever. But it's reality, and reality is you keep bringing in backup quarterbacks who can start. And in fact, Ryan Fitzpatrick did take the job away from Tua at the end of the season, or in the middle of the season. He took the job away, then they switched him out at the end of the season. And Teddy Bridgewater was a guy that people were talking about Buffalo potentially getting. And Buffalo ends up and goes and gets Case Keenum, who is another type of quarterback who can potentially start games if you need him to, for a few. So, like in that holy trinity right there of Keenum, Fitzpatrick and Bridgewater. So
right.
just the journeyman starters. So, but it's so screwed up, because then you got guys that are right-handed. If you put them in, the team's going to feel more comfortable. And that was the sense that you got last year, was that the team was more comfortable with Ryan Fitzpatrick at quarterback, simply because the mechanics are all the same. The muscle memory is the same. So, in terms of what that is, I mean, I'm not gonna knock Miami for putting in a proven, consistent product behind one that isn't. I'm not going to knock them for that, but it looks ostensibly bad when your guy is a left-hander and you bring in a right-hander and you're like, no, we absolutely believe in this guy. And then on top of that, part of the Brian Flores lawsuit is Flores wanted Deshaun Watson, and part of that, his being let go, was that Chris Greer and Stephen Ross in the ownership group wanted to keep Tua. And now you're bringing in some guy that could potentially start for him in the middle of the season. And I can't remember if it was you or somebody else talked about how they think that that's what's going to happen, that Tua will get benched midway through the season, or like week 4. Yeah, so like week 4 he gets benched. And
that was me.
Started for the rest of the year.
Yeah, that was definitely me. I tweeted that. I don't know when I tweeted it, but as soon as Bridgewater was signed, I said probably by week 5, Teddy Bridgewater will start. And I fully believe that, in terms of just what I have seen. And I've watched Tua since he was a freshman at Bama. I know when Tua was good and what made him not when Tua was good at the collegiate level. When Tua was great, frankly, at the collegiate level. I know why he was good, how he was good. Those facets to his game over the years have whittled down, because as Tua has become hurt each and every year that he's played since, the game that he's competing in now is a faster, more difficult game. The NFL compared to the NCAA Division I ranks, whether it be in the SEC or not. And I just feel that they're not as sold on him as they appear to be. I think they're trying to make their team as best as possible, as every team should, for their fan base. Miami knows they got to turn a corner at some point. They've been out of it for quite a long time. But it doesn't necessarily mean to me that they are all in on Tua. I know Mike McDaniel's job as a head coach is to come in and revitalize Tua's career, but you know it as well as I do. A new head coach doesn't necessarily mean that coach fully endorses the quarterback that he's coming in with. So Miami's got a lot of picks. Whether they have a successful season or not, I could see them going one way or the other with Tua. This season for Tua is do or die, I think, for him this upcoming year. And it'll be very interesting to see what Miami looks like this season. So, with that all being said, we gave our thoughts on the Jets offseason thus far, the Patriots offseason thus far, and of course, Ryan and I have talked about the Buffalo Bills offseason, but I think this approach is going to be very different. The mic for me right now, it's sitting still, but it is piping hot because this take is about to just light this one on fire. So the mic might not even exist after this take is over from yours truly, Ryan Thomas, on the Thomas Take Sports Podcast. To me, this season for the Buffalo Bills, this offseason, I have said this a lot lately, and it's caused a lot of people to give me some pushback, but I think no team had a better offseason thus far than the Buffalo Bills. And I say that from a non-biased standpoint in terms of going in with what you already had and the talent that you had, to adding more talent, to adding depth, and to keeping your own. That's three major boxes that were checked off by Brandon Beane that I didn't expect to be checked off. I didn't expect Von Miller. I didn't expect O.J. Howard to be signed in the same day by the Buffalo Bills. I didn't expect to extend Stephon Diggs. I didn't expect to bring in all these pieces like Tim Settle, Jordan Phillips coming back, Shaq Lawson coming back. And with all the positive vibes, like the kids say these days, good vibes only, the good vibes only have taken place at One Bills Drive. And they've taken place, in fact, in a way that leads me to believe that this season, more than any other, this 2022-2023 offseason for me, and this fires me up, this season coming up is Super Bowl or bust. Something would have to go horribly wrong for the Buffalo Bills to not win the Super Bowl this year. Or at least, at the very least, represent the AFC in the Super Bowl. Because that's the door that the Buffalo Bills have been knocking on these last 2 years. Whether it's losing to the Chiefs in the AFC title game or the divisional round. Seeding was different this past playoff run than it was the year prior. The objective this year is to run the table of the AFC, and for the NFL world to acknowledge, the words of Roman Reigns, acknowledge me. Let's acknowledge the Buffalo Bills as a team that is a front runner in the AFC. This season to me is Super Bowl or bust. It has to be done. The window of opportunity is right here, right now. I'm not talking about next year, the year after that. Oh, we got this, Diggs long term. We got Allen long term. No, this season, Buffalo Bills, Super Bowl or bust. What do you say to that, Ryan Caughill, on the Thomas Take Sports Podcast?
I agree with you.
Okay. I like it.
I didn't know. Yeah, no. No, because I usually talk for so long. No, I absolutely agree with you. I think last year was one of the best shots that we've seen in a long time. I mean, it was a clear. Once you get past Kansas City, I mean, it was a clear road to the Super Bowl, an extremely clear road. I think now, after having watched the Super Bowl, it would have been a more difficult task than I think a lot of us were anticipating against the Rams, or having faced the Rams. But I mean, the road on the AFC was clear after Kansas City, and it was so close. I mean, literally 13 seconds, so close, because after that game, it was, we're in the Super Bowl. Like, we're not at the AFC Championship, but I mean, it's like, okay, you like Joe, I like Joe Burrow. I think a lot of people like Joe Burrow. Cincinnati is a significantly better team. He actually has an offensive line this past season than the year before when he had his injury. Oh yeah, he came back from that massive injury. He has supreme talent, a really good defense, and just a heck of a special teams in Cincy. So, but I mean, it was the Bills' game to lose, and they did. And so that is what it is. But I would agree with you. I mean, it's now, I'm not saying that like Beane and McDermott should be fired, blah, blah, blah. Like, that's not, what we're saying. It comes down to, though, like, you have the coaching, you have the front office, you have all three phases of the game, and now you've doubled down on all of that. Because again, like you said, you bring in O.J. Howard, who's going to complement for the two tight end set that our new offensive coordinator likes to run. You bring in Von Miller on the other side of the ball. Hopefully, we'll get a new punter in this draft. Because I mean, like, people are like literally taking a punter in the draft, in most of the mock drafts. So you hope to like lock that down. Isn't that great to be a Bills fan and be like, we just need this punter, and if we don't get him, we're not winning the Super Bowl. And it's like, it's a crazy thing, but no, it's
a great time to be alive. It really is
a fantastic time to be alive. But to end this, I will just say, to set you up for what we're going to talk about here in a bit.
Yes.
As much as I have enjoyed seeing the boys return to Orchard Park to begin off-season workouts, I don't find myself quite as excited as I have in years past. I quite literally saw it and I went like, meh. Like, because A, there's a standard and an expectation, and so I expect that to be met. But B, these boys over here on the ice are buzzing. And I'm extremely excited for hockey. And, being more of a hockey kid than I was ever a football kid, I'm extremely excited for that, just because, especially now, like with the off season coming up here pretty soon and the Stanley Cup playoffs, where Buffalo's always number one in the viewing category, even though we haven't been in it in over a decade. So I'm extremely excited about that. But I absolutely agree with you. For me, it's Super Bowl win or bust. Don't just show up.
Yeah.
If you're gonna show up, you might as well win. So I don't care if Josh Allen has to, knock on wood he doesn't. But if Josh Allen, if this entire offense and defense, if at the end of the game they're all just laying on the field and they need stretchers, as long as we have the Lombardi Trophy, like that should be the mindset. Like sacrifice everything, because that's what your job is.
Yeah, I like that. I say Super Bowl or bust, meaning like they have to win. But to your point, like watching those Instagram clips or tweets or Facebook posts, showing these guys getting out of their car, mainly, Josh Allen and some of the guys, Stephon Diggs, and some of these guys that have been here a little while, Ed Oliver. That was, to me, seeing these guys getting out of their cars, going into the facility, business as usual. But what fires me up, and has fired me up since it happened, was this Von Miller move. And it just, to me, it shows the next level of recruiting. Like the results have led to this ability to be able to go out and coax a Von Miller away from the bright lights, big city living, jet stealing, wheeling, dealing, son of a gun life that that Von Miller was living in L.A., like the Nature Boy Ric Flair, and bringing him to Buffalo, of all places. I love Buffalo. I am so proud to be from this community, born and raised. When I go through the peaks and valleys of life from here on out, hopefully it's a long life, I will always carry that Buffalo pride, that chip on my shoulder, wherever I go, wherever I am, it's always with me. But for somebody that is not from here and to come here, they don't quite understand that until they're here. And I think Thurman Thomas said it best. A lot of these guys, they have these preconceived notions of Buffalo, but then they come here and they play here and they don't want to leave. And Von Miller seems to me like he has already somewhat embraced being a part of Buffalo. He's all smiles, very happy. I'm sure the paycheck really helps. But just the mojo, the mojo of this team is so exciting. And I think this division is ours to take. I think this season is ours to take. We just got to go out and take it. I think last year proved that. So Buffalo Bills, AFC East favorites, Super Bowl or bust. And I know you're excited to talk about the next topic. So
I am. But what I will say to that is, though, how many of the Sabres and Bills from their Stanley Cup and Super Bowl years still live here? Most of them work for the team now. I mean, like literally the entirety of the Sabres staff is pretty much just former players.
And I'll be talking about that. I'll be talking about that with the on ice discussion of the Rochester Amherst. So
all right,
let's get right to it. We're diving into some hockey discussion now. This is obviously a momentous week for the Buffalo Sabres. It's been a momentous, month and a half since Jack Eichel touched down from Las Vegas to Buffalo. This team has been a completely different team. I think there's no coincidence to that. I'll just throw that out there. But that is the fact of the matter. But positive reinforcements have happened, but positive reinforcements are now added to the team with the late season addition of Owen Power. I want to get your thoughts on Owen Power's first week as a Buffalo Sabre. Thus far, what have you seen from Owen Power on the ice that really intrigues you, and what has you excited for next year when discussing number 25 of the Buffalo Sabres?
So I was at, I mentioned it beforehand. I was at his first home game against St. Louis. And I watched the first game when he was in Toronto. And obviously Toronto are always cup favorites, and they're most always notably first round exits. Don't know how it's going to happen this year. I mean, they're really doing good, but it just seems like in the playoffs it's whatever. But you play two really good teams in your first two games, and you go 1-1 in your first two games away and at home. But you walk into Toronto, and to be how young he is, and granted, he knows he's good. He's the first overall pick from the year before. He's from Canada, which is, hockey mecca, and he's just from outside Toronto and Mississauga, so, midway between Buffalo and Toronto. And you go to Michigan, and which is a stacked team. What is it, like 4 top 5 picks in last year, in like literally last year's draft playing. Obviously, you're playing. There's more NHL players. Your goalie is his rights are under contract with the team that you're about to sign with, and the moment was not too big for him at all. I mean, literally, granted, a simple stop, a simple defensive play, but for Sabres fans, that simple defensive play from, I forgot who was shooting it, but was going to shoot it to Matthews. And it was a 2-on-1, and it was just him, and he read the play perfectly and made the stop. And
that was Marner and Matthews.
Okay, so Marner and Matthews, literally the best duo in hockey in at least the regular season. Marner just has this thing about disappearing in the postseason. I don't know what it is with him, but it just literally you're standing between one of the best complementary players, and literally the highest scoring player in the league this year, in hands down a top 5 player in the NHL currently, in Austin Matthews, and you just stop the puck from getting to him. Yeah, he didn't do like I'm gonna just poke it away, or I'm gonna try and stop it and it's gonna fling off, it's gonna go to another player and it's gonna set up a goal somehow. He stopped that puck and then started to go, and that was kind of the moment where I'm like, ooh, this kid's good. This kid, like, the moment's not too big for him. Like, his thought process is, I'm going to show up, I'm going to play hockey. And I'm really happy, and I'm happy that I'm having this thought. But my thought process when seeing Owen Power literally was like, I wish Dahlin was like this his first year, but I'm really glad he's coming out now, because we got to see Power and Dahlin on the same defensive pairing, and you're like, this is 2 first overall picks playing together on a defensive pairing, and they're both very good this year. Okay, what do I do now? Because I've completely lost my mind. And the Sabres defense looks really good for the first time in a while. So Owen Power, his first week as a Buffalo Sabre is a Buffalo Sabre week. I mean, you win one, you lose one. Did they play again? Since I don't think they've played since St. Louis.
I don't think they played.
They had a little bit of a break. They're traveling today because they're going to be in New Jersey for tomorrow. And then, so it's I mean, listen, when your franchise icon and Rick Jenneret's on your way out, is on his way out, and Owen Power comes in for the final few games of that season, it's kind of like the changing of the guard. And I hands down think that with good goaltending next year, this is a playoff bound team for sure. But yeah, he had the most Buffalo Sabre week ever in winning and losing, and really good team play and really bad team play. So I mean, it can only go up from here.
I agree. As far as your thoughts on him, I definitely agree. To throw in, what I noticed is just it's more so the reaction to him within the team. Whether it comes from Donnie Granato or his teammates, I feel like to talk about Granato's reaction to Owen Power, Donnie G's full trust in just throwing Owen Power to the Wolves and saying, hey, kid, you're in the NHL. We're putting you right in there. You're going to play X amount of minutes, whether it be 15, 18, 20 minutes. We're going to go with it, and we're going to roll with you. You're here. We want you out there. We want you to compete. Be ready. And then he just says, okay, checks off those boxes, does what he needs to do. And seeing the reaction to him in the locker room post beating the Toronto Maple Leafs for the third time out of 4 games this season. We'll throw that out there. Casey Middlestat hands him the saber. He takes the cover off and looks at the sword, and everyone's like, whoa, you're not supposed to take the cover off. Be careful. Don't poke anybody. That was pretty funny, and it was a cool moment, as well as Josh Allen being at the Sabres game, the last Sabres game, with Jim Kelly. All these guys are coming in the locker room, and here's this kid from Canada that probably has lived and breathed hockey his entire life, walks right by Josh Allen as if Josh Allen's just some guy. And Danny Granato's like, no, that's Buffalo Bills quarterback Josh Allen. He's like, oh, and then he walks over, shakes his hand. That was really cool. Just to see the kid enjoy himself on the team, to see him be embraced by the team. I think the positive vibes that this team has is just oozing out into the last 2 months of the season, as well, rolling into, God willing, the next many, many years to come. As you mentioned, Dahlin and Power, Matthias Samuelsson has been a cog in the lineup, to say the least, since they brought him up from Rochester. And talking about who's in the pipeline, it's a perfect segue. You have a young core 3 defenseman, and you have 2 guys in Rochester that I was able to observe at my first ever. Inexplicably, I waited 29 years to go to my first Rochester Americans game. I don't know why. It never happened until one random Wednesday last week. I went to see the Amerks play the Laval, whatever they're called. I can't remember the name. Laval Rockets, okay.
Yeah.
And
Montreal's team,
okay. And I had bench seats, so I was right behind the bench, so I was able to see the team up close and personal with 2 players that I was observing, Jack Quinn, first-round draft choice, as well as first-round draft choice J.J. Peterka, who the Sabres drafted a couple years ago. And Kevin Adams obviously was high on both those players. He took Quinn over some other players that were projected to be the Sabres pick, as well as trading back into the first round for J.J. Peterka. And I want to tell you this, Ryan. This was an awesome time for the sole reason, and this is the first thing I'll think of when I think of my first Amerks game. I'm at the game, walking to my seat, and the first thing I see, and this is going to put a smile on your face, the first thing that I see is Michael Pekka, former Sabres captain, legend, the man that led the hardest working team in hockey, as well as Dominic Hasek in the crease, that helped, to a Stanley Cup for the first time in 25 years in that gap from 99 to whatever year, for 75, 76. So Michael Pekka, watching him coach these guys as an assistant to the head coach of the Rochester Americans, that it's not coming to me right now, but you can fill in the blanks for me. Watching him and Mike Weber as an assistant to the head coach of the Rochester Americans. What is the head coach? What is his name? I can't think of it. Drawing a blank.
Seth Appert.
Seth Appert. Okay, I almost said Seth Apple, which I knew that wasn't right. Seth Appert, who is also, I watched him as well, very engaged, very on top of things, very, very quick to change the lines in terms of just mixing them up throughout a game. I was very impressed, and I was impressed with Jack Quinn and J.J. Peterka. But the one question that I have for you, Ryan, is I do believe in my heart of hearts that Quinn and Peterka will be up in the NHL with the Sabres this next season. But they're both wingers, and they're playing on a line with Sean Malone as their center. Who do you think Quinn and Peterka could potentially... I would imagine that they won't want to break that duo up when they bring them up to the NHL, right? Like they'd bring them up to the NHL somewhat as a package duo based on their momentum that they've had playing with one another. Who do you see potentially as their center on a line?
So I'm assuming that they're not taking Tage away from his line. I'm assuming Krebs, just because Krebs got playing time in Rochester after he first got here. And that's where he was. He was literally, bridging the two of them together, and they played really well. I think Krebs got a couple of points out of it. And especially with who Quinn and Peterka are, with Krebs' passing ability, I mean, it's a recipe for success. And again, like I said, they had the opportunity to play together when Krebs was in Rochester. That said, it's interesting that you bring up not wanting to break it up. I was actually pretty early on when people were talking about potentially keeping Quinn and Peterka up at the NHL level when they got an opportunity earlier in the season. I was pretty big on hey, I'm good if Quinn comes up, but I want Peterka to stay down just because I want him to adjust more to the North American side of things. Whereas this Quinn has already had that. Now that we're at this point and we're looking at potentially next year, both of these guys being up, which I'm very hopeful that they are, because I'm a big fan of both of both of their additions. I have a Quinn jersey. I have a Rochester Americans Quinn jersey. So I'm a big fan of both options or both choices. But bringing both of them up and centering them with Krebs next year would be extremely important, just because I think Krebs is fast. He passes really well. He's played with them before. I think it's just an absolutely perfect fit. Not to say that somebody like Tage wouldn't be a perfect fit, but Tage has been playing mainly with Skinner and Tuck.
Yeah.
And that's your number one line. That is
sure.
is your number one line. It's your most productive line. But the Buffalo Sabres being the Buffalo Sabres, that first line versus that fourth line, there's a lot of real estate in between where players can get added. So I'm extremely hopeful for both of them, and I'm glad that you got to go. I wanted to go to a Rochester game this season, and I never got the opportunity to, just because things came up, and then obviously now I have COVID, and so but like I said, I have a Rochester Americans Quinn jersey. I liked the Quinn pick. As of right now, I mean, he's a better player than Marco Rossi or Cole Perfetti, who were supposed to be the two people that get taken if they're still there, and they were both still there, and he didn't get taken, and now Kevin Adams looks like a genius.
Yeah, and I really like what I noticed from Quinn is that he's always looking to put a puck on the net. He's a natural shooter. JJ Peterka, this guy was the hardest working player on the ice in that game. This guy was end to end, flying all over the place, looked completely exhausted once this game was over. I have never seen a player skate up close as hard as I saw JJ Peterka, and it goes to show you, that's what they have seen, that's what they saw in him to draft him, and that's what I think they've been able to pull that out of him even more than he already showed it in his past playing experience, because Michael Peck, a former player, literally in their ear whispering, do this. And I saw a lot of, I was right behind the bench, so I saw a lot of Michael Pekka, writing on note cards, this is where you were, this is where you need to be. This is where I want you to be, this is where you need to go, type stuff. And it seemed like it was just a very well-oiled machine between Seth Appert, Michael Pekka, and Mike Weber. And we talked about this last time with Kevin Adams as far as him being a player evaluating a player. Former player turned GM evaluating players. Now you have former players coaching players. And I think that is just a huge difference in the regimes of years past, where you had a top executive like Tim Murray, or a top executive and Jason Botterill. Kevin Adams is a former player looking to evaluate, looking to bring in the right mindset type players, and that's what I've noticed throughout this journey here in the Kevin Adams era. Next up, in terms of
so really quick,
sure,
if I can, the whole reason that they brought in, I want to say his name was Zach Taylor. No, that's not it. I think that's the Cincinnati Bengals head coach. Whoever the last Rochester Americans coach was,
Chris Taylor.
Chris Taylor, thank you.
Yep.
It's not like Rochester was bad, but Seth Apper is like really big. Like he's a guy that you want for development. Paterka is just really quickly. Paterka's like one of the best. He skates really well. He passes really well. He shoots really well. He's like a sniper, but also just like a power. Like he's probably one of the best, or will be one of the best all around. I would say top 6 players in the NHL. But talking about player development and talking about one of those good kind of all around players, do you know who the head of player development is for the Buffalo Sabres?
It's not coming to me. I should know this, and it's not coming to me. My brain is dead today. I don't know.
Adam Mayer.
Okay.
Adam Mayer
I thought it was Mayer.
Yeah, Adam Mayer is literally the head of the Buffalo Sabres player development, and so you're right. Like to the point that you said, you have a guy who was a player who won a Stanley Cup, who evaluated talent through his job at Harbor Center, is now an NHL GM. You have really good former NHL players like Michael Pekka behind the bench working with these guys, and then Adam Mayer, who was. He was used more on the enforcer line, so he got kind of tagged with that more, but he was a guy who could shoot and score. He could skate really well, and set guys up for set up other players for success. So, and he's in charge of player development. So he's not just working with and administrating the development program in Rochester. I mean, he's the guy that's working with Owen Power when he's in Michigan, or Portillo in Michigan, Johnson, Huglin. You want to talk about, in the pipeline, Aaron Huglin, a 4th round left winger from the Bottrell era, but still like potentially a guy who only in his sophomore year of college is going to be really good here in the next couple of years, and potentially an option for the Sabres in the NHL. And he's a 4th rounder that was taken during the Bottrell era. So a lot of good coming up the pipe, and I'm going to shut up now and let you go back to what you were saying.
Oh, no, you're good. That is something that I've noticed as like a running theme within the organization. This is like the next era, obviously, compared to Botterill and Murray. They were very unsuccessful in spades, but there were pockets of success that I think are sprinkling through now with the emergence of Tage Thompson. He was one of the pieces in that Ryan O'Reilly trade, which guys like Paul Bissonnette piss on that trade. And I understand, the grand scheme of things. Ryan O'Reilly won, the practically the Stanley Cup MVP, won a Stanley Cup the year following that trade, and Sabatka and the guy that quit, I can't even think of his name off the top of my head. Berglund. Yeah. So, on the surface for a while, it looked like that trade was horrible, but now you have a first-line center out of it. So what? Ryan O'Reilly, first-line center. What is he, 33, 34 now? Tage Thompson, 23, 24, maybe even younger, if my memory, it might be 22, 23, 24, something crazy like that. Pump it. Yeah, Tage. Is he 24?
He's only 23.
23, okay.
I mean, he might have turned 24, but he began the season at 23.
At 23, okay. And playing with Jeff Skinner and Tuck, that line is legit. That line is without a doubt a first line. Too legit to quit. So that's the line that I think will be atop that lineup. And, talking points of the Buffalo Sabres, I think, and talking about the future, the NHL is so different in this way. And I'm wondering if this rule will ever change as far as collegiate players that are drafted, whether or not they will come into the NHL. They have a couple years to decide. They could stay in school a little bit longer and things like that. The NHL is a little bit more complicated in that whole process of being drafted, coming from college to the NHL, whether you want to or not. And what really I'd like to discuss is and learn about, frankly, because I'm a little bit light between the ears on this topic, I guess you could say. That is the status of Sabres defenseman Ryan Johnson, potential Sabres defenseman Ryan Johnson, potential Sabres goalie Eric Portillo. Those are two pieces that Kevin Adams is very high on in terms of what they could contribute to this team if they were to come to Buffalo. But as of right now, it looks like we know that Eric Portillo is going back to Michigan. And Ryan Johnson, do we have word yet on the status as to whether or not he is coming to Buffalo or not? Is that decision still in the air?
No, we don't. I don't know if it's still in the air. I thought, and I'm gonna look at it here really quick. I thought he was going back. But I can look at it here really quick. The number one thing, though, while I'm looking this up, is everybody freaking out about the two of them. And I get it if you're having Cal Peterson shock like a decade later. It's not a decade, but 5-6 years later, I get it. But also at the same time, it's a different team. It's a different atmosphere. I would say that Eric Portillo makes less sense than Johnson in terms of freaking out. Like, why wouldn't a goalie who is like built like Eric Portillo is on Michigan, which is a very good team? You have the relationship with Owen Power, which is a comfortability thing between defenseman and goalie that already exists. You're 6 foot something. He's a big dude. He's really good at his job. Why would you not come to a team that doesn't have a clear-cut future at goalie, like a clear-cut future number one? It looks like there's nothing on Ryan Johnson yet, which I'm still not worried about because same thing, Johnson and Portillo, both of their rights end up or terminate with the Sabres at the end of the year, and they could choose to go elsewhere. But again, like I just explained for Portillo, with Johnson, like most of your right-hand defensemen are going to dip. They're going to be gone, and you're going to be left with Bryson. And then Kevin Adams was talking about seeing if Power was comfortable on the right side. They were playing Dahlin on the right side because I think their hope is to have one of them play on the right, be comfortable there so that you can have Power and Dahlin on one defensive pairing because why not? Other than that, you're going to have Jacob Bryson. So I think that there's room. I mean, they can switch guys from the left to the right. It's been done. It's not like it's a crazy, thing that doesn't happen or would be crazy if it did happen. But I think there's definitely room for Ryan Johnson on the roster, and I would absolutely love to see Ryan Johnson sign in Buffalo and play.
Yeah, I understand the, I guess, sticker shock of a guy that you invest high on and he decides he's going to stay in school and not play for you. I get the we invested this in him and he didn't want to come here. But at the same time, the experience of a collegiate athlete is you only get it once. You're only gifted that opportunity, and it's a rare opportunity. The average person can't do that. It's a very small percentage of people that can actually be that athletic to then be sought after in high school by a college and play at the collegiate level. Then for a worldwide pandemic to completely throw a wrench in the experience is one thing. But then for Michigan, the program, that the Wolverines in particular, to come up short against Denver in the Frozen Four semifinal, that, Ryan, had to be devastating because I watched that game and it was very close, back and forth. They lost, if my memory serves me right, in overtime, or at least late in the game. And these guys feel like I still have some unfinished business here, whether they go back to the Frozen Four or not. The experience was not the experience that they wanted it to be. And if you've ever had a moment in your life where you feel like your experience isn't what you want it to be and you have the opportunity to finish it the way you want to finish it, who's to tell you that you can't, or who's to tell you that that you shouldn't? That's my take on it, right? I feel like that's a solid way to look at things. If you're an athlete, like, hey, I didn't get this opportunity in the form and fashion that I had hoped. it didn't go the way I wanted it to for a wide variety of reasons, whether it was on the ice or off the ice. I'd like to get another crack at it and go from there. How are you feeling as far as that take from me?
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree with you. Obviously, we don't know if that's the mindset of either one of them.
Right, right.
But I mean, I wouldn't have been mad. I don't know if I'd say that. But I like if Power had decided to do that. If he went, hey, listen, I was on one of the most stacked teams in college hockey history since maybe all the college kids got together and we defeated Russia for the Miracle on Ice. Like, if you're on that stacked of again, like four of their players were top 5 picks in last year's NHL draft. They had more NHL picks on top of that. So it's an extreme, and Michigan's a fantastic hockey school. So I get it. That said, personally, do I think Michigan is going to accomplish that same feat again? No, because we just got done talking about how Brisson or Bryson is in Seattle now, and Power is in Buffalo. All these guys have left. They've signed their entry level contracts. Montreal got like 5 or 6 prospects signed to contracts through the Frozen Four elimination. So. The really good thing from a Sabres development standpoint is that basically every team, including the one that won in the final, who won the Final Four?
I couldn't even tell you.
Oh God,
I couldn't even tell you. Yeah, I couldn't even tell you. My rooting interest was that Michigan would pull it off, and that Owen Power and those guys would get to the level that they wanted to, because I felt like they, I don't want to say deserved it. You got to go out and earn it. But just from what I knew and interviews I'd watched of those guys, like they came up the ranks together, and it would have been an awesome story. It would have been an amazing story. But it didn't go their way. And to your point, if Owen Power would have said, I'm not coming to Buffalo yet, that's a different situation in its entirety, because that's a first overall pick player that missed the majority of what would have been his rookie season had he come out, but he decided to play and finish Michigan, and that would have been a little bit of a dicier situation. But with Johnson and Portillo mainly, I feel like these guys, if they don't want to come yet and they want to continue their collegiate career for whatever reason it may be, I'm not going to knock them for it. And to be honest with you, I think it could potentially help them down the line with the relationship with the Sabres, being that the Sabres aren't forcing their hand. So I don't know if you were able to pull that up yet on the final
it was
Frozen Four front.
Yeah, it was Denver beat Minnesota State. And it was actually Huglin and his team, which was University of Minnesota, that beat Owen Power and Eric Portillo in the Michigan game. So, but to my point, while none of the Sabres prospects won the Frozen Four, of the majority of, like literally 50% of the teams competing for the Frozen Four had at least one Sabres prospect that was on it, whether it was from the Kevin Adams era, which was the majority of them, or there was the handful from the Botterill era, and there was even one team that was disqualified or either disqualified or didn't make it, that had another Sabres prospect in Constantini, who was taken, I want to say, the 3rd or 4th round of Kevin Adams' first year. And the reason I remember that is because Constantini was attended Harbor Center for development camp for a number of years, and that's how Kevin Adams knew him. And so he's like literally one of Kevin Adams' draft picks, a guy that he's, one of those rare opportunities where you've literally developed this kid and then you get a chance to draft him for so long outside the NHL and then in the NHL. So the future is bright, because most of our, we had players on almost every team in the Frozen Four, at least on the major teams, Minnesota, Michigan, other Minnesota, like so many players. And so, yeah, I'm not upset. And I would have understood if Owen Power went, listen, I'm going back and I'm going to try and win this. And I totally get that. I absolutely 100% get it. But I'm glad he signed. But again, because of A, that mindset, and B, all of the opportunities and openings on the Sabres team, I don't see how there's not a place for Eric Portillo and not a place for Ryan Johnson to, at the end of this year, come back and go, okay, I'm done. It's time to go to the NHL.
I love it. Love it. Either way, it's something to keep our eyes on, and it's something that I think we can all agree. I don't know about you because we've been told this a bunch of times. We've been pitched this idea that the future's bright, have faith in the future. But honestly, the future of the Buffalo Sabres, I have never felt more excited, actually more sad. I will say sad and excited on one hand for a season to end, but excited for another season to start.
Yes.
I'm excited for this off season for the Buffalo Sabres. This is a big off season, a lot of cap space. Moves galore are anticipated to be happening. Kevin Adams is really going to get his money's worth out of his paycheck as the GM of the Buffalo Sabres. So I'm excited, man. And I gotta ask you, do you play fantasy hockey at all? Are you into that?
So every year I go, I want to do fantasy hockey, and I rope my father. And I have a hockey podcast that we always do like half the season of and then stop doing because it's too much. And somebody else that just likes doing fantasy stuff. So I always rope them into it. And after a week, I go, this is impossibly hard. I don't have the time or the focus to do this. So the answer is yes and no. I start it and then I don't touch it. And I don't know what the outcome is ever at the end of the year.
I mentioned that because I am looking to add some people to my league coming up next season. I just got throw it out there. The invitation's open. Whether you decide to accept, I'll just throw it out there. But I lost the semifinals in my fantasy hockey league with a team that featured the likes of Connor McDavid, Austin Matthews, Alexander Ovechkin, Sidney Crosby, Tage Thompson, as well as Alex Tuck, and I am just shocked.
Who were the people that you were with that let you draft all of these guys? I'm assuming you didn't trade for them, because if you did,
no.
What were you giving up to get those guys?
So I picked first overall. I took McDavid. Then I waited all those picks for whatever reason. I don't know why Austin Matthews was passed on in between.
Literally the number one goal scorer this season.
Correct. And then I took Alexander, because I had two picks back to back. I took Alexander Ovechkin, and then I took Austin Matthews, then Alexander Ovechkin. Then I had Sidney Crosby, and my fourth pick was Kaprizov Kaprizov of the Minnesota Wild. The team was loaded, but the one thing I didn't have, much like the Buffalo Sabres, was an elite goalie. So that's something that I will not check. I will check that box off next draft. You bet your ass. That's happening.
All right. I like it.
It is fun, though. It's helped me get back into hockey these last few years. It was a tough run for me, as well as yourself as a Buffalo Sabres fan. But, Ryan, always a pleasure having you on my show. I look forward to having you on again, of course. Invitations always open to get a fellow Ryan on the show, as well as fellow Buffalo Sabres, Buffalo Bills, and maybe soon to be a Toronto Blue Jays fan.
Maybe. We'll see. We'll see after this. Going to baseball games in person is a lot better than watching it on TV.
Oh, for sure. 100%.
Especially for somebody like me who's not interested in it. So maybe. No, thank you for this.
Of course.
We're doing kind of like a standing partnership thing now, so I'm going to be on a whole heck of a lot more. I tried to get you on my show for tomorrow, but unfortunately it's at a time where you can't be on.
I know. Next week I could, though. Next week. Yeah, so right. You got me. Coming up.
All right, awesome. And then just for the fan base fans, we're doing a live draft night coverage for rounds 1 through 3 on April 28th and then the 29th. I will be there the 28th. I'll be part of it. I won't be able to do it the 29th because Rich Jeaneret's calling his final game, and there's I could absolutely sit here on a live stream and talk to you guys about what's happening with the NFL draft. But I would not do. I would kick my own mother out of my apartment in order to listen to the Rick Jeanneret, listen to his final game on the 29th. So unfortunately, sucks for you, NFL draft, because I'm going to be listening to Rick Jeanneret call his last game. So.
Hey, nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that at all. So no. I should be there actually the first night as well. I'm going to talk to awesome. our good buddy Justice General in regards to that. He reached out to me about the first night or the second night. I'm thinking of doing the first night. So I'm going to get back to him on that. But yeah,
this,
right.
I will say, was my idea.
Oh,
the whole thing was my idea, and then I did not execute it at all. So it's on Justice. It's on Justice, and then the really cool thing with that, just before we go, is Mookie is going to be at the draft. So we're going to be able to call in to literally the NFL draft and get some on the floor reporting from Mookie there. Maybe talk to some of the new Buffalo Bills.
That would be fantastic, right? That would be awesome. Very exciting times to be a Buffalo sports fan. As always, Ryan Caughill, thank you so much for joining me. I'm Ryan Thomas. That was the Thomas Take Sports Podcast. You can find it on the Buffalo Fan Base Podcast Network. Let's go, Buffalo. Go Bills.
Go Bills. Go Sabres.